Hey, welcome back to the podcast. We do have the fog machine back. It's back in effect.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's always a nice ritual to start.
I feel like it goes with
the
vibes of today. Like the subject that we have today is kind of trippy, dare I say.
Dare you? Say it. Hold on, I just need to grab my water bottle.
Alright, we today, guys, are going to be talking about psychedelics. Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's going to be ancient psychedelics.
Yeah.
So going into, the past and how were these substances used in the past. I'm so excited about this episode.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. And it's not just the term psychedelic, it's more hallucinogenic or mind-altering substances in the ancient world. And for this podcast, we're going to kind of get into what role did these plant medicines, like these hallucinogenic plants, play in the role of consciousness and the society at large.
Yeah.
And we'll even get into a cool, fun theory at the end called the stoned ape theory. And explaining that perhaps these hallucinogenic medicines led to the ultimate evolution of humankind.
Oh, can't wait.
So, as we all know, I think it's pretty common knowledge that psychedelic and psychoactive drugs and substances have been used by various ancient cultures for thousands of years, medicinally, spiritually, and even recreationally. And in this podcast episode, we will explore the use of these substances in the ancient world and uncover how they influenced and affected the consciousness of entire civilizations. So before we get into any specifics, let's get into the history of psychedelics and the ancient use of hallucinogenic substances. So, the earliest evidence of psychedelic use can be found in a cave. And the cave is called Tassil Najar in the region of the Sahara Desert in Algeria. In this cave is a mural depicting what is referred to as the Mushroom Man.
Oh, exciting. Got any pictures?
I will have pictures. You won't have pictures.
Up on the screen.
Yeah, I'll put them up for you guys. Or Mushroom Shaman. He's a bee-headed figure with mushrooms sprouting out of his body. And these mushrooms have been identified as psilocybe myrae. And these are psychedelic mushrooms native to the region. The mural is 7,000 to 9,000 years old.
Wow.
So very cool that these cave painting of this shaman man with the psilocybin mushroom is over 9,000 years old. So very cool. Another early piece of evidence of possible psychedelic use comes from the Selva Pascula mural in a cave near Vilar del Horno in Spain. The mural features mushrooms that research believe to be Psilocybe hispanica, a local species of psychedelic mushroom, and this mural is 6,000 years old. There's also evidence of the use of peyote, which is a cactus containing the psychedelic mescaline in the Rio Grande in Texas, and the researcher who discovered the specimens dating back to 3,700 BC said that the identification of mescaline strengthens the evidence that the native North Americans recognized the psychotropic properties of peyote as long as 5,700 years ago. Meanwhile, the use of San Pedro cactus, which also contains mescaline, is more than 3,000 years old in Peru. And in northern Peru, a stone carving of a deity dating from 1,300 BC shows this god holding the San Pedro cactus. And this is kind of a theme that we will begin to see as we dive into the different cultures. Most of these ancient cultures don't hold this as some sort of recreational pastime. They see it in a lot of reverence, and it's often depicted in their murals with a god or deity holding it.
It is like, even nowadays, like I would say it's only in certain parts of the West where it's seen as a recreational drug, but like if you think like ayahuasca ceremonies, like a lot of people even from the West like go out to meet shamans and have these like deep spiritual experiences, and
Yeah.
like even a lot of people even here in the West, like they take it as a spiritual experience for themselves as well.
Yeah.
I think there's so much more awareness around that more now than there was like
Yeah.
a few years ago.
Definitely. Yeah. There was like these cultures were deeply imbued with the use of these plant medicines and stuff like that, and it wasn't. And many of those cultures are still hanging on today. But a lot of what happened when the West came in is that those cultures got destroyed, and that spiritual lineage and link with a lot of those medicines kind of fell away. But let's continue on. So the mushroom stones indicating the use of psilocybin mushrooms have been found in both Mexico and Guatemala, dating to 1000 to 1500 BC. And in 2019, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences describes the discovery of a 1,000-year-old shaman's pouch. Really cool. So imagine finding this little pouch. And inside it, there were multiple types of psychedelics, including bufotenin and DMT. And the pouch originates from southwestern Bolivia and also includes snuffing tablets, used to crush plants into a snuff, and a snuffing tube most likely used to snort the prepared drug.
That's crazy that like it didn't like disintegrate.
Yeah, I don't know how it was preserved. And interestingly, the pouch contained harmine, which can be combined with DMT to achieve psychedelic effects. And researchers say it's likely the shaman took these substances together, either as snuff or through beverage like ayahuasca. And whilst the study shows the possible use of ayahuasca 1,000 years ago, the researcher Dennis McKenna points out that there isn't data showing exactly how far back ayahuasca use dates. And many natives, however, believe that the ceremonial use of this tea is thousands of years older. So,
yeah, it's kind of like the recipe for like preparing it. I get this sense that it's probably like been passed down like word of mouth rather than something that's been like written down or like put into hieroglyphs or anything like that.
Especially most these Mesoamerican shamanic traditions are kind of like the old Celtic druidic traditions, which were oral history and word of mouth, and your stories and your history are passed down verbally. And it's not like the Sumerians or ancient Egypt who made these great hieroglyphics in cuneiform. So it's a very different culture, but they're both using psychedelic.
Yeah, and it makes it very difficult to like find like the origin source of where it comes from and exactly when.
Yeah.
But, it could be, thousands and thousands of years old. Who knows?
Definitely. I really think that they are. And yeah, should we go into some of the Mesoamerican cultures?
Yeah, let's do
Cool.
it.
So, now that we know that some of our most ancient ancestors, even 9,000-year-old years ago, were using psychedelics, let's take a dive into some of these cultures and see exactly how and why these mind-altering substances were used. So, first off, on our ancient time machine through the rivers of time, let's take our stop at ancient Mesoamerica. So, from hallucinogenic mushrooms and cacti to alcohol-infused enemas and psychoactive dried toad skins, the array of consciousness-altering substances that people in the early America used was wider than thought. People living in Mesoamerica before the arrival of the Europeans used such psychotropic drugs primarily in medicine and religious rituals. Mesoamerica is a region defined more by shared cultures than by geographical boundaries, but it can roughly be considered as the southernmost region of North America. The modern nations of Guatemala, Belize, Nicaragua, Costa Rica are among the countries in this region. Moreover, some of these drugs are still used today for medicinal purposes in indigenous communities. In many rural and traditional communities with limited access to the modern health system, many healers are taking care of the health in the native communities. Seizures, migraine, depression, and other neurological and mental health disorders are treated in the context of ritual ceremonies with some of these psychoactive drugs. So let's take a closer look at some of these mysterious substances. So, balche and ritual enemas. The Maya, whose civilization reached its peak between 250 BC and 900 AD, consumed an intoxicating drink called balche, or maybe, I'm not sure how you say that, but it kind of reminds me of pulque, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so I'm not sure how that's pronounced, but they drank this during the ritual of divination, in which they tried to commune with the spirits, according to the report. The Maya made the drink by mixing an infusion from the bark of a plant called Longocarpus longistylis, together with honey produced by bees that fed on a type of morning glory plant that contained ergine, which is thought to have psychedelic properties. Interesting. In the divination ritual, intoxicated Mayan people aimed to communicate with spirits in order to predict the future or make sense of events that were difficult for them to accept and understand. And such events included illnesses, changes in fortune, bad weather, poor harvests, and wars. And perhaps they were on this when they even made the famous Mayan calendar, you know?
Yeah.
Because if they were using this to predict future events.
Oh, definitely. Interesting. It doesn't sound like, I don't know, too tempting, that substance.
Sounds quite intense.
Yeah. I wonder if people still take it today.
It's made with a bark and a special kind of honey and a morning glory plant. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I remember taking something called morning glory seeds.
Poisonous.
I remember eating these morning glory seeds, and they were psychoactive in Canada. So maybe it's something similar. So drinking balche was also often accompanied by smoking tobacco and performing ritual enemas using substances that contained alcohol, sometimes mixed with other psychoactive substances. The enemas were applied using syringes made of gourd and clay, and they were performed to help people attain more intense trance states more quickly. Enemas up the butt, right?
Yeah. Right. Gross.
Yeah. Crazy. These guys were intense. Okay, so this is mad. So at least 54 hallucinogenic mushrooms in the genus Psilocybe were used by pre-Columbian Mesoamerican cultures, and those mushroom species can still be found today in Mexico. Psilocybin is the hallucinogenic compound in these mushrooms and produces mild to intense mind-altering effects. So, religious practices involving the use of the sacred mushrooms took place in the Valley of Mexico and the rest of Central America, and researchers estimate that these rituals are at least 3,500 years old. That's very cool. So, I'm just going to skip over that and go on to the hallucinogenic cactus. Another source of intoxicating substances in Mesoamerica was peyote, which is a type of cactus that contains more than 60 hallucinogenic compounds, including the primary one, which is mescaline. And mescaline is found within nodules of peyote cacti, which can be chewed or made into an infusion that people can drink. And ritual use of peyote in the Americas dates back more than 5,000 years to prehistoric time, the report says. Traces of the drug have been found in Mexico and in the Shumla cave in Texas, according to the study. I wonder if the dinosaurs were... Just said prehistoric, and I can imagine dinosaurs like munching on some peyote.
I wonder what like kind of different effects you get from that compared to mushrooms.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to experience. I know that there was this one guy, and he said he did this thing in the desert in America, and they dropped him off in the middle of the desert with the peyote, and they just leave you there and come and pick you up later.
Oh God, terrifying. I heard, I could be wrong, but I think that one might, like the cactus one, might make you like sick or like vomit. You know, like some of these things like they make you vomit and stuff while you're on it.
So with peyote, it's mainly you can, other than like the, psychoactive effect, you can have increased body temperature and heart rate, uncoordinated movements, and profound sweating and flushing. So maybe flushing is something to do with that, depending on your dosage maybe. And next one is toad skin. So one of the most unusual drugs in Mesoamerica was sourced from the toads in the bufo genus. I've heard of these, and I've actually seen a Vice documentary on them taking.
Yeah, I don't support the toad one.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's leave the animals out of it.
Yeah, because it uses the salivary glands of the toad species, which produces these things called bufotoxins, and they have psychoactive properties. And the bufotoxin is a poison to repel predators, and it expels it from the pores on its back. And they extract this, and I think they can dry it, and then you use it and smoke it, and that it gives you a very powerful DMT effect. But reports by the 16th century historians say that the Maya added tobacco and the dried skins of a common toad to their alcoholic beverages to make the drinks more potent. So I haven't heard of that one before. There's something called toloache, which is a type of plant also called the devil's herb, and has been used for centuries in Mesoamerica for treating wounds and combating pain, but it was also used in rites of passage as a conscious altering drug during rituals. Very interesting. Cool. So that was Mesoamerica. And you can see that throughout there's a huge cultural, it's profoundly within their culture, and especially within shamans and the rituals and within that they were doing. But it's not only in Mesoamerica. If we travel a little bit over, we end up in ancient Egypt. Home of the pyramids, home of a lot of mysticism and very cool stuff. So what ancient Egypt is most famous for is a water lily from the genus Nymphaea, and this plant became known as the blue lotus or the Egyptian lotus. And the aquatic plant is not just a thing of beauty, it has a secret too. And the ancient Egyptians were very, very aware of it. It is a symbol of life and immortality. The blue lotus was believed to provide a spiritual connection into the afterlife and offer communication with the divine, as was mentioned even in the famous Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Nymphaea Caerulea was considered a symbol of life and immortality in ancient Egypt, and it had ethnogenic qualities to communicate with the divine. Ethnogens are mind-altering substances that alter perception, behavior, cognition, and the cognition of an individual. They are used often by spiritual and religious groups across the world, across cultures, and what worked in the flower's favor was the roots being able to flourish in nutrient-deficient mud that lacked oxygen. The blue flowering species is small and round and floats on the top of lakes and bodies of water. Its flower buds rise to the surface over a 2 to 3 day period, then open at around 9:30 in the morning and close in the early afternoon at 3 p.m. when they reach their maturity. It has a storied history stretching thousands of years across cultures as varied as Egypt, Maya, Syrian, and even in Thailand, to name a few. It is renowned for its intoxicating scent and inebriating effects. Originating in the Nile, variants of the blue lotus are grown in many countries today. It is also renowned for its medicinal qualities, which range from an aphrodisiac to pain alleviation, treating depression and anxiety, and even settling upset stomachs. It is also used to treat insomnia, and it contains 2 alkaloids, apomorphine and nuciferine. So, apomorphine is a dopamine antagonist, and we won't get too much into any of the science. We just kind of want to explore the ancient history of it. But in a lot of hieroglyphic paintings, there are the blue lotus depicted there. And here you can even see them harvesting it.
It's so beautiful, such a beautiful flower.
Yeah. And in ancient Egypt, they didn't only use the blue lotus. They use it a lot in magic. So religion, magic, and medicine were intertwined due to the belief that all aspects of life were influenced by the supernatural. To simplify life, a comprehensive corpus of texts was written that combined magic, medicine, and religion, which was compounded into the Egyptian Book of the Dead. In fact, the Egyptian Book of the Dead is one of the primary sources to study this plant, along with some extra papyri, the Ebers Papyrus from 1500 BC in particular. The Ebers Papyrus contains a mammoth 800 medicinal recipes and treatments. That's really cool. I would like to get my hand on those, like a copy of that Ebers Papyrus. And it showcases the vast knowledge Egyptians had of plants and medicines. The Turin Papyrus shows the presence of sexuality-themed cults, secret temple gatherings of elite society who shared sacred wines imbued with the blue lotus extract, and a clear reference to its aphrodisiac qualities. This religious scripture aimed to guide the deceased through the afterlife and achieve eternal life. And the papyri contained information on various plants, remedies, spells, and healing methods, accompanied by magical rituals such as incantations and invoking gods or goddesses. In the case of the blue lotus, which was the flower that resembled the sun, the Egyptians were enthralled for thousands of years. The captivating scent of the flower is depicted in various art forms, with people shown holding the flower to their noses to inhale its aroma. Additionally, chalices, often shown in tomb scenes and other artworks, suggest the use of the flower in libation rituals or other festivities. The Egyptian Book of the Dead mentions and portrays the blue lotus in several chapters, always in relation to magical and religious rituals. In these depictions, the hallucinogenic plant, which has neurotransmitter blockers properties, is often shown alongside... Okay, so there's 2 plants. There's a plant called the mandragora, often shown alongside the blue lotus. And this highlights the knowledge that the ancient Egyptians possessed about the effects of various plants, despite their lack of technology to explain it. There was even a gold-plated shrine decorated within Tutankhamun's tomb, and he was holding the blue lotus in one hand and 2 mandragoras in his other hand.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
So I wonder if the combination of the 2 enhances the experience. It seems like there's something to that.
Yeah, and I've heard that the blue lotus can be done in many ways, but the most powerful way is to ferment it into a wine, and that activates some part of it. But yeah, I'm not sure if combining the mandragora and the blue lotus offered something even more.
Yeah, because a lot of hallucinogenics medicines work that way. activates for more. Or...
Yeah. So there is these frescoes in the tomb of Nebamun, and this is located in the British Museum, and they offer a glimpse at the use of blue lotus in ancient Egypt. They depict ritualistic funeral dance with 2 male dancers accompanied by 3 women garlanded with blue lotus petals. The women are offering vases with golden emanations as if they contain a magical fluid. And this ritualistic dance is a testament to the importance of the blue lotus plant in the religious cultures and the practice of ancient Egypt. So the blue lotus are also depicted in erotic cartoons and papyri, and further emphasizing their cultural significance in ancient Egypt. However, the fact that the temple drawings only show their use by higher castes, such as priests and royalty, suggests that these plants and their effects were not accessible to common people, which is surprising given that a majority of historical finds do not depict the lives of everyday people. Unsurprising, sorry. So the blue lotus story serves as a testament to the extensive knowledge of plant-based substances possessed by the ancient Egyptians. And despite the lack of technology to explain the effects of these substances, the blue lotus plant was held in high esteem and played a significant role in their religious and cultural practices. I imagine it was used in, initiation rituals too within the temple sects and cults of ancient Egypt, and it had a big effect in trying to experience death before life, as well as fully embodying life in the moment, because it could be an aphrodisiac as well. And it seemed like there were some crazy Egyptian parties back in the day.
Yeah, and I can imagine sort of if you're having some kind of initiation into like this spiritual hierarchy, you would want to enhance that experience, like to make it feel so much more than it seems it would be at a base level, at a sober level, you know? So that it's definitely going to feel really intense and like something big, something,
It's, and to help open your eyes to, to all the symbols there. Because in ancient Egypt, they said that hieroglyphics were designed in a way so that maybe the most common person who could read would see the hieroglyphs and read it one way. But then also the initiates of different secret esoteric practices would have multiple meanings to the hieroglyphics. And so there were multiple meanings to everything. And, if you also, even in the book of Thoth, the Emerald Tablets, he said there's 12 different consciousness levels from which you can interpret this information. Yeah. And so to be able to enter in a heightened state of consciousness into the sacred temple and to be able to behold everything there, it would really be so incredible, honestly. And I think our initiations, our rites of passage are very important, and I think that these substances and plants can play a huge role in offering or facilitating a rite of passage for a person. And a rite of passage is like some sort of big event, it's almost like a vision quest, something that you embark upon and it kind of forms who you are,
I don't feel like you need to have religion for that.
Definitely not.
But I bet back then it would have been a whole different type of culture. Where I think these were used in religious ceremonies, obviously, so it was a religious thing. But I feel like you can have rites of passage and spiritual quests without religion now and on your own, without
definitely
all the drama of the or the pantomime of the religion and the ceremonies. And
If it's pantomime, if there's a good religion, then they're helping you, they're guiding you.
Oh yeah, like, well, I think anyone's in a religion because it is helping them to some extent, or like working for them for where they are at that time. But I believe back then, like, they did have these hierarchies in maybe not a healthy way, you know, where it was like they would have incest because they didn't want to let anyone into the bloodline. And like that kind of fucked up.
Yeah. Depending on what era you are in ancient Egypt. Yeah.
But any royalty in any culture back in the day had that same mentality and mindset.
You do see that a lot. Yeah. So let's veer off from ancient Egypt and head over, and there's a lot of more stuff in like the Africa region. There's this thing called Ibogo, and there's a bunch of, literally no matter where you go, there's going to be a history of psychedelic or some sort of mind-altering substances. We just don't have, the time to cover everything.
But it does say a lot, like the fact that all over the world, in every single culture, that everyone has access to like their own type of hallucinogenic, where they're able to go on these, like, to me they're like, inner journeys, and explore these psychic realms with the help of these medicines, and the fact that all different types of ones are available all over the world. It just feels like it's meant to be, we're meant to experience that, or and have those experiences, and it's accessible to everybody. It's not just something only this is found in this region of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting to note is that it's not the drug that causes the experience, but it's the way that plant interacts with our natural biology and chemical system within our body. And it's taking these things and processing them in a way and releasing things that we have in our body. It's not like this is producing, it can't, nothing can produce something that we don't have in our body. It's like it's releasing chemicals in our brain. It's releasing DMT, releasing all these.
Said it. He was like a neuroscientist who studies like the effects of mushrooms on the brain and things, and how it like just lights up all the pathways in your brain, and it's like there's a massive conversation going on in the brain, much more than it would in a sober brain. It's making it more active and more like broadening your view of the world, that the world that we all build our own world within ourselves, and broadening that.
One thing that this one guy said that was in that interview that really caught my attention is like how crazy it is, especially with mushrooms, that you take this little, dried little mushroom with a little mushroom cap, and it can completely alter and change the way you look at reality. For me, when before I had taken anything, I was like atheist, I was depressed, I was, a completely different person. Then just taking this once completely changed everything for me. Made me see, made me even start believing in some sort of God that exists in everything. And it's incredible that these beautiful plants can do that for us.
So many plant medicines really do open the mind, like even if you in a much more subtle way. I think the THC in cannabis does the same thing. It definitely makes people their minds more open, to things, to more possibilities, more creativity, and that even that's proven to really enhance creativity and things. And I think the same with like the mushrooms and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny like how these plants that grow like natural in nature, naturally, that these have been banned, as class A drugs. And it's just crazy, and that you can get in serious trouble for using these when they're not harmful. All they do is open your mind, and
they make you question.
Yeah,
they make you
make you more independent in your thinking, open your mind to more creativity, making this world like such a beautiful place, because everything beautiful in the world created by humans comes from our creativity. And if you think of amazing pieces of art that were created on psychedelics, like the Pink Floyd album, they locked themselves in a basement and wrote that on mushrooms. And
Alex Gray.
Yeah, like so much amazing stuff comes from these substances. And as we're seeing here with the ancients, like even they were aware of this back then.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of like pin down one very good point you made is that we've been using these for thousands and thousands of years, and it's only very recently there's, the last... I know it started with the Christians, and they had a big war on these kinds of substances, and it's kind of bled into our modern day society, and they're still continued to be, just outlawed and not made accessible and easy. So
less than 100 years ago, you could go to the chemist and, buy marijuana cigarettes, or, you not get in trouble for picking and eating mushrooms.
Yeah, we need our old shamans and apothecaries back.
Yeah.
So, let's move on to India. And in India, the psychoactive substance was known as Soma, or the nectar of the gods. And here is a beautiful little passage from the Rig Veda. And
is it like, what kind of plant is it? It's like a cactus.
No, it's kind of a combination of different things. So
kind of looks like a cactus, but with a flower on top. But that's just a...
Yeah, we'll kind of get into the Soma. So Soma can come to mean many different things, as we'll come to see. But here is this is a hymn to the god Indra. Night to the Soma drinker come, for his enjoyment these pure drops. The Somas mingled with the curd, thou grown at once to perfect strength, was born to drink the Soma juice. Strong Inda for preeminence, O Indra lover of the song, may these quick Somas enter thee, may they bring bliss to thee the sage. So it's kind of a little opening before they drink their Soma. In Vedic times, Soma which is roughly 5,000 years ago. Yeah. Soma was a plant given as an offering to the gods, and there was great mysticism and spiritual power surrounding the plant. So much so that it was actually considered a deity in its own right, leading many to search for the true identity of this revered plant. And we can kind of see parallels here throughout all cultures, especially in the ayahuasca, within the Mesoamerican cultures and the South American cultures. Ayahuasca is believed to be a deity unto herself, and when you take ayahuasca, you are communicating with the spirit of the plant.
Mother ayahuasca, they always say when they're talking about their trips.
And also they say that marijuana has a spirit, and so it's kind of, you see these parallels, and they've...
Papa marijuana. Sorry, I did.
Hey, we get an Rasta over here. So, in the Rig Veda, Soma is mentioned as existing in all plants, and many different types of Somas are indicated, which is interesting because when you actually look at plants, DMT can be found in most plants in small percentages. We have DMT inside our body. DMT is everywhere. So in the Rig Veda, they're, I think, maybe perhaps hinting to this. They even said that water itself, particularly that of the Himalayan rivers, is a kind of soma. In Vedic thought, for every form of Agni or fire, there's also a form of soma. And in this regard, there's kind of a balance which has been equated to the yin and yang of Chinese thought, but this is more in a metaphorical sense. When it comes to the physicality of it, many scholars believe that the plant ephedra was the main soma plant, and ephedra grows commonly in Afghanistan and Iran and was the main soma plant of the Persians. Ephedra is common in different places in India even today, and it is sometimes called somolata. While ephedra may have been commonly used, it was not the only plant, nor does it resemble the soma plants described in the Rig Veda. The Atharva Veda mentions 5 great plants of which soma is the best, including marijuana, barley, darbha, kusha or durva, showing that many plants had soma-like qualities. Here soma is again connected with another type of reed. Yeah, darba or Saccharum cylindricum, which could have easily been pressed to get a juice, much like sugar cane. Soma is also connected with marijuana, suggesting that mind-altering plants were regarded as different types of somas. In other places, soma is connected with kushta, a kind of spicy nervine, and with the Ashvata fig tree, and said to grow in the Himalayas in the Atharva Veda. So soma was like a mixture of different drinks. In the Vedas, the juice of soma was extracted by stone grinding or cooked with grains such as barley, milk, or curds, like ghee or dadi. Soma was often used with ghee and honey, and soma was often called madhu, honey or mead. Special herbal honey preparations and herbal ghee preparations were additional types of somas. Soma is also connected with the lotuses and other flowering aquatic plants, and we know that the lotus and blue lotus grows in places like Sri Lanka and India. And they said that there's likely 24 main soma plants, and they are all prepared together in different ways, and there's not just one plant. So it's kind of like ayahuasca, how they take 2 things to make one. And in this yogic and spiritual practices, soma is a nectar secreted from the pineal gland. So they also called the soma within the pineal gland during deep states of meditation. And this amrita is thought to drip down and mingle with the heart chakra, aligning the heart and mind, which is kind of very accurate. Soma at a yogic level refers to the crown chakra, which is opened by Indra, which is yogic insight, and releases a flood of bliss throughout the body. This inner soma is the main subject of the Vedic hymns, though outer somas were also important. And soma was an important part of Vedic ritual and spiritual practices, and there were actually in these yogis who would be in their caves, and they would have attendants, and the attendants would give them big bowls of soma, and they would drink the soma and go into these deep states of meditation and come back with a lot of knowledge, different yogic practices, breathing things, and they would come out eventually and then begin to teach what they had learned from taking the soma. So that's ancient India.
Really cool.
No. Transition music.
Ancient Greece.
And now we'll go into ancient Greece. So, in Greece, psychedelics were essential to religious practice and were used in the cryptic Elusian mysteries.
Oh.
Yeah, the Elusian mysteries.
Really?
Yeah, I like that sound, the sound of that. The Elusian mysteries were celebrated in honor of the goddess Demeter.
Oh,
And
right.
her goddess and her daughter Persephone.
Persephone's mother.
You wrote a fan fiction about that, didn't you?
Not fan fiction. What?
No,
Greek god fan.
fantasy fiction.
I read a fantasy about those, but there's tons. I've read probably 3 different Persephone and
Yeah. So it was regarded as the most sacred of all the mysteries in the ancient Greek religion. And there was a festivals that the ancient Greeks partook in each year from around 1600 BC all the way to 392 CE. And it took nearly the whole year to prepare for the secretive rites of this ritual.
Jesus.
From what little is known about the ritual, experts believe that the participants would walk along this sacred way in a parade. Sacred way must be some sort of road or path in a parade that lasted 10 days until they reached the temple of Demeter in Eleusis, where they would take a sip of the sacred drink called kykion after days of abstaining from food.
And walking, probably in the sun because
And
Greece is hot.
this kind of austerity is common even in Native American traditions. They will often fast or climb to the top of a mountain and back before going into a sweat lodge or doing long dances before they partake in any sort of because it's a clearing of their vessel. They want to fast so that they can clean themselves out and also, do these austerities to truly connect on a deep and respectful way with these plants.
Yeah, because I've heard they can these plant medicines can react with what's in your body.
Yeah.
And I don't, whether it's myth or truth or not, but a lot of people say to eat pure foods if you are going to eat before going on these trip experiences and
especially with
plants
ayahuasca and stuff.
Yeah, because if you're especially not to eat animal products, things like meats and things, because you're taking on the energy of the animal products.
They drank this. They would take a sacred drink called kykion after days of abstaining from food. So Eleusis is located about 18 kilometers northwest of the center of Athens, and it is part of the metropolitan area of the Greek capital. But the ancient temple of Demeter at Eleusis was burned down by the Persians in 484 BC in the Greek-Persian Wars. And it was not until the administration of Pericles that an attempt was made to rebuild it. I would love to go and visit the Temple of Demeter if there's still something to visit.
Yeah, same. Oh my God.
So, after drinking the substance, participants would dance ecstatically and reenact the story of Demeter and Persephone. The hidden rituals, which were kept secret under the threat of death if any participant exposed information, revealed information about the mysteries that likely involved the use of psychedelic drugs. Researchers now believe that the drink used to sustain the initiates during their initiation fast contained ergot, a hallucinogenic fungus. Ergot grows naturally on grains such as barley.
Oh, LSD.
So maybe that's what happened with the
use
Soma
the
as
barley.
well.
Yeah,
the Soma.
With LSD's grown on grains.
So ergot naturally grows on grains such as barley and produces alkaloids in the body when consumed.
No, but I don't know though, because it doesn't produce naturally. They would have to purposely sort of ferment.
Here it says, yes, it produces alkaloids in the body when consumed, which can produce hallucinations, convulsions, and psychosis. In small doses, the substance produces a psychedelic trip, much like those of drugs such as LSD. This is because the drug LSD was developed by Albert Hofmann, and he was conducting experiments with lysergic acid, which is produced by ergot fungus.
Okay.
Experts believe that the drink kykion, the concoction drunk during the secret rites, likely contained ergot fungus and produced psychedelic effects when consumed. Although the ingredients used to create kykion were shrouded in secrecy and antiquity, and scholars have gleaned that the recipe likely contained water, rye, or barley, and possible Roman mint. Homer mentions kykion in 2 of his poems. The drink is said to be made of goat, cheese, water, and barley in the Iliad, and in the Odyssey, the witch Circe is described mixing honey with the sacred drink, which she then uses as a potion to turn Odysseus' crew into pigs. Scholars believe that the purpose of the Elusian mysteries was for participants to reckon with death and human mortality, which weighed heavily on the Greek psyche. Oh yeah, we lost the footage of doing the Elusian mysteries. I think
right.
I have to do it again. Now, Elusian mysteries.
It doesn't have the same effect. There's no magic.
Still magical for me. The focus on the myth of Persephone and Demeter, which deals with life, death, and the afterlife, ties into the festival's central theme of death. And even when we look at the Freemasons, and one of their first symbols is the acacia plant, which is the plant that's used to extract DMT today. And it's over a coffin and skull. And so in ancient Egypt, with the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you can see that there's a lot of themes here in relating to the afterlife, death, and all of that. And perhaps it's these substances that give us a glimpse beyond the veil, that give us a glimpse into the afterlife and what happens. Research believes that the use of psychedelic substance in the form of kikyon during these rituals may have helped participants reckon with death and their own mortality, as users of such drugs have reported in accordance with their own experience. Definitely did for me in my own experience of psychedelics. So, moving on from the Greeks, we're coming into the West, even more to the West.
Yeah.
In a little island called Ireland, where the Celts and the druids and the pagans did their
Yeah, we both have
thing.
ancestors from Ireland.
Yep.
We both come from the good old little island of Ireland.
Yep. And you know that they were doing something, because they're coming up with things like leprechauns and
Yeah.
fairies and all that stuff.
They're
That
all
they're
about fairies, and they have a big history of witchcraft and folklore all around magical things. So some of my favorite stories and folklores come from Ireland.
So there was this cool thing that I'm not going to talk about in this episode, but it was the history of hexing, and it was getting into how these witches who would use different types of nightshades and hallucinogenic things to hex people, but they would combine the different plants in such a way that it would create a really negative experience for them.
Oh God.
So they would be creating nightmares for people, and those were what the hexes were.
Like bad trips.
Yeah, bad trips that you couldn't escape even if you were dreaming. And so that was really cool. Maybe we can go into that in another episode. But for here, let's go over to Ireland, and there are two types of magic mushrooms in Ireland. The first is the red-topped, white-spotted, stunning variety called the fly agaric.
Yeah, which is, I was always warned, because these grow in Britain as well, and I was always warned, because you see, especially where I used to live, there'd be tons of them, and they're stunning. They're like the ones you see in storybooks of mushrooms and stuff. And I was always told to not touch them and stuff because they're poisonous. So it's interesting,
So this mushroom is classified as poisonous, but reports of human deaths resulting from its ingestion are actually extremely rare. A deadly dose is estimated to be around 15 caps in total per person.
Okay.
And a dose strong enough to give the user hallucinations has been medically documented to be less than 1 cap. So if you want to have a good trip, you could take 1-2 caps, and you would nowhere be even in the ballpark in terms
You
of
wouldn't get sick or anything.
Who knows? I'm not sure.
I've seen dogs eating them. I'm always like, oh God, the dog's eating that. Poisonous.
Oh, what a fun time. I wonder if it can see colors. So these mushrooms have received an unnecessarily bad rap over the year. The danger with this little guy is that the mushroom does somewhat resemble a very poisonous mushroom called the death cap. And the death cap looks the same but tends to be white rather than red. And After preparing the fly agaric for consumption, druids were said to eat it for its hallucinogenic properties. It was believed that these hallucinations conferred great knowledge and enlightenment to those who received them. The fly agaric mushroom was a very important fungus to the druids. In fact, ancient people called it the flesh of the gods. It was thought to put druids in direct communication with the universe when they ate it.
Makes sense why, like, all these little, like, pictures of, like, the other realms and the fairy lands, they always have those red and white mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, sort of red with white dots on it.
Yeah.
Like in Mario, basically.
They must grow in, like, Switzerland and stuff, too, because when I was on the ski slopes...
They grow all over Europe.
Yeah, because there's lots of that mushroom imagery in, like, Switzerland. And even on the ski slopes, there were all these, like, wooden mushrooms with the red caps, like, scattered through...
All over, like, the cooler, so the northern west Europe.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, there they are.
Yeah, so the mushrooms are the above-ground fruit of a much larger organism that lives underground. And the subterranean part can spread under huge tracts of land and can be thousands of years old. And many of the ancients believe that because the organism is so old, it has accumulated wisdom which can be passed to humans via the fruit. Whatever your stance is on the use of these, there's no doubt that it's one of nature's most interesting and beautiful species. So that's that one. And then there's the second one is the Liberty Cap. Yeah, which actually looks like a small little...
nipple.
Oh, yes. I wasn't going to say that. But I was going to say like a little elf hat.
Oh, yes. But it's got like a nipply top.
Yeah, okay, they're kind of is nipply.
Yeah, and they're the most popular in England. So like, loads of my friends or people that I've known, like, they go like wild magic mushroom hunting, and everyone is looking for that Liberty Cap. And yeah, they're the most highly consumed mushrooms in like England that I know of, and most people in England do wild pick their mushrooms rather than...
Yeah. So interestingly, sheep like the mushrooms too. And farmers from Kura say that they like to laugh at their sheep going mental after they've eaten a belly full of magic mushrooms.
Oh, wow.
That's very funny.
Well, I wonder what the sheep see and what they do. Sheep have like crazy eyes, like kind of scary eyes, to be honest. I
like looking into a sheep's eye.
Yeah.
So throughout Irish history, Liberty Caps were taken by regular people. The psychedelic trip is milder than that of the fly agaric, which was left to highly trained druids and other masters of the mushroom. The fly agaric was deemed too powerful for anyone who had not undertaken training at the higher levels of the mind. Druids took these mushrooms and reported back to the lay people on the wisdoms the universe had transmitted to them while they were with the fairies. Away with the fairies.
I wonder if that's where the saying comes from.
What thing? Away with the fairies.
Yeah, because that's what people say. People who are a bit like not with it, not 100% here. You know, they say, "Oh, she's away with the fairies." Yeah. That one, a bit crazy, basically.
So, the fairy connection. There's an interesting thought that different hallucinogenics produce different types of visions. LSD or acid is a synthetic chemical, copy of the ergot fungus that grows on rye, and people who take it are likely to report seeing paisleys in front of their eyes. It is a common hallucination when taking the psychoactive drug, and of course, when did paisleys burst into Western mainstream fashion?
60s.
In the 60s and 70s, when people were tripping on LSD like mad. Paisley art was everywhere, and some was stunningly intricate and beautiful. So as for those Irish mushrooms, the two magic mushrooms that grow here in Ireland, the Liberty Cap and the fly agaric, look really different to each other, but both are said to produce visions of fairies and leprechauns, plus a variety of other world creatures very specifically associated with Ireland. In just about every vintage picture of fairies or elves, there is a picture of a mushroom in it. Fairies and mushrooms have been closely associated since time began in Ireland. And have you ever wondered why these two are so intertwined?
makes so much sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it? Like,
definitely.
so much sense. You always see, gnomes and elves and fairies, all always drawn with mushrooms around. It just makes so much sense. It's basically like the mushroom can help you tap into their realm, because if they're they're living in this, like, what's invisible to us, a realm that's invisible to us, when you're sober and stuff. And I do feel like the mushrooms and hallucinogenics do allow us the abilities to see into other realms.
Definitely. So visions of fairies are so strongly associated with mushrooms that the Gaelic slang for fairies and mushrooms is the same. Pookies. Pookies! And a magic mushroom trip has always been said to make the user go away with the fairies. Or someone could be off with the pixies.
Oh yeah,
I love that saying.
Yeah. Especially when you say it in the Irish accent.
Yeah.
Off with the pixies.
Hi, she's off with the pixies.
Yeah.
There are many tempting clues about the usage of fly agaric in pagan times, and psychic poets called Imbas Foransi, speaking of eating red flesh of a pig, dog, or cat, which was likely a metaphor for the fly agaric. It was chewed before a poet would lie in a dark room and seek inspiration. There is also bad fairies and evil spirits that, depending on where you were, that some trees could be infested with bad fairies, and you would be able to see it in the vision. And also there's a lot of psychedelic influence in Celtic arts, and especially in the swirling Triskelion. The Shrooms is a group that advocates for the therapeutic use of magic mushrooms in Ireland. And David McNamara, a spokesperson for Shrooms, says, "We have to look at art and folklore to infer mushrooms' use by the ancestors. The rock art in Knowth and Newgrange appear to depict entopic patterns, which, according to some archaeologists, implies psychedelic medicine use by the artist." And more than one scholar has suggested that ancient Ireland was home to a magic mushroom religion.
So cool.
American author Peter Lamborn Wilson wrote a book called Plowing the Clouds, saying that it makes perfect sense that the Indo-Europeans used psychedelic drugs in their rituals. In fact, these psychedelic experiences could be the origin of the pagan religions that sprung up all over Ireland. And Wilson is stunned that no one's connected psychedelics to Ireland, because there's a plenty of scope for a cult of the mushrooms amongst the Celts, the old-fashioned Indo-Europeans so loyal to the ancient ways and so fond of intoxication. What we do know is that orally transmitted druid lore is beyond recall. Irish myths and legends were not written down till the Christian era, and then only by monks who probably misunderstood and censored any reference to psychedelics or to the cults dedicated to them. And Wilson says that any mushroom lore that survived till the 9th to 12th centuries AD would be the province of illiterate peasants, wise women, and wizards, not of literate monks. So, yeah, it goes on, and all the there's a folk story that says, as the fairy faith in Ireland goes back many centuries, there's speculation whether the people other than the artistic literate class who were also familiar with psychoactive mushrooms, our ancestors had extensive knowledge of the plants and fungi of their region and their inherent properties. It stands to reason that those who ingested psychoactive mushrooms, whether accidentally or purposefully, experienced the shimmering imagery and its attending inhabitants that many who have ingested the mushrooms today are familiar with. This harkens to the fairy world of Tir na Nog. And Tir na Nog, we talked about in our Elven episode,
series,
is where the Thuade du Danan come from. So there's a lot of stuff here, and they even had sweat houses that druids held ceremonies when consuming magic mushrooms. And this is seen even in Native American traditions, but that they had these little stone sweat houses too.
So cute looking.
Yeah.
A little moss roof.
Yeah.
Like a little hobbit house.
Yeah. So, yeah, these...
Were they just sweating there?
Well, it's like a sweat lodge, so it's used to kind of, sweat out your toxins, but it's also, in that show that we watch, it can help to get your blood pumping and also increase the trip. So to kind of come to a little bit of conclusion, we didn't even go over this in the Indian episode. In the
Last week's episode.
No, in the Indian epoch, in the ancient Vedic use of Soma and
earlier
everything.
In this episode.
Yeah. But, there are, lots of different cultures, and even the art within the ancient cultures is very psychedelic, especially if you start to look at it and imagine you were on psychedelics, you could definitely begin to see the influence that it has there. And DMT is one of the most common motifs that most cultures can recognize, and one of the most interesting motifs belongs to the culture of India, especially in relation to ancient spiritual traditions. And this is the Sri Yantra, or the yantra means instrument or machine, and as such it is an instrument used to focus the mind on spiritual concepts, and the yantra is thought to call the deity into presence. So when you look at this and now try imagining being on some sort of psychedelic or enhanced mushroom, these are keys or gateways for the consciousness, the conscious mind. What happens is, if you were on one of these substances, you're supposed to focus your attention into the center of the yantra. There are a lot of different practices, and including each thing could represent something different, but you can even begin to spin and turn and unlock these when your mind is in a state of enhancement through psychedelics. And according to Kanamadu in the tantric symbol of cosmic unity, yantras function as a revelatory symbols of cosmic truth and as instructional charts of the spiritual aspect of human experience. And although the yantra is usually depicted in 2 dimensions, it is often conceived of as being multidimensional, and especially when you begin to enter that psychedelic state, that will not be a 2-dimensional thing. I've experienced these before.
I've even just looked at a patterned wall throw on mushrooms, and it's like there was drawings of monkeys within the patterns, and the monkeys were all climbing around, and I was just like, what the hell?
Yeah. So there's a very cool thing that I did want to talk about. So the DMT experience can encapsulate motifs from pretty much all of the world's ancient cultures. Even when I trip, I begin to see ancient cultures. And is it because I've looked at them? But not really, because before I had even gotten into ancient cultures, I was seeing motifs and things like incarnation, like symbols, like Sanskrit symbols, like all these things before I'd even really investigated into them. And I think that the psychedelic experience and the DMT gives us access to shared consciousness.
Yeah.
And that shared consciousness can kind of be activated, and we begin to peer into other times. And it's almost like the ancients had stored this knowledge in a space beyond time and space that we can go and witness. My eye keeps twitching. Okay, so there is this common thing that happens when people take DMT, and it's this seeing of entities, and not just entities, but beings and worlds in the form of jesters, clowns, or colorfully dressed trapeze artists. It's a very strange thing, and one very common experience is something called the space elves, which are these very mischievous little space elves that kind of hold the gate for the DMT experience. And I've always seen some sort of jester-like figure, and I'm going to put Alex Gray's art here because he experiences this too, and it's a common shared theme. And they're these entertaining jester-like entities who perform acrobatics and perform magic. And it's this archetype of the trickster, which is found in Jung's model of the collective unconsciousness. And why they manifest during the DMT experience is strange and we don't really know, but you can see how we begin to have these representations in our physical world. You know, the mirrors, the fun houses, the jesters. It's kind of like
Clowns.
Yeah, and these clowns and these, you know, weird, trippy patterns, and the mirrors you look into, and they're all shaped funny, and then you're walking on these ground that's spinning around,
like a
you know?
madhouse or a fun house or a haunted house. They all are kind of inspired by, obviously, this sort of experience, trippy experience.
And the Joker and the magician, the clown and the magician, they're kind of in the same place, right? The trickster. The magician is the trickster, is the illusionist, right? And these kind of all plays here, but it's interesting to see that, and jesters have even been around since ancient Egypt, and they were used to entertain pharaohs. So yeah, when you begin to see these like motifs within the jesters and the carnival scene, because there is a very much like a carnival that happens when you go up into the DMT realms.
A lot of people have, especially on mushrooms and I'm guessing LSD and stuff, the kaleidoscope effect, you know, where you're like seeing what feels like you're seeing like, you know, the fabric of the universe, or like how things are made on an energetic level. How is everything holding together on an energetic level? I feel like it taps into that.
Definitely.
It kind of like, has like a digital feel to it in a way.
What?
Like when you close your eyes and you're seeing like the kaleidoscope sort of patterns, and it feels like you're seeing underneath this physical veil, almost like there's like this digital reality underneath that is all just patterns, and you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So it's like the digital code that would form what we see on our screen is the fabric of that geometry is what is like the numbers, but it's like it's the building of our universe, and it's what creates our physical.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the stuff behind the scenes,
behind
the code.
The simulation, if you like.
Yeah, simulation, I think, or projection. Because it's not quite digital, but I know what you mean by that.
Yeah, it is like simulation or projection. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've skipped over some stuff, but we have to get into this before we end the podcast.
Okay.
And this is the stoned ape theory. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry, I got carried away.
Okay, let's dive in.
Okay. So this was brought to us by McKenna. Terrence McKenna. He's very famous. I've listened to some of his things on YouTube.
He's still alive?
No. Maybe. Probably not. I don't think so. Okay. But he argued in his book, The Food of the Gods, that what enabled Homo erectus to evolve into Homo sapiens was its encounter with magic mushrooms and psilocybin, the psychedelic compound within them. And it was that created this evolutionary journey that he called the stoned ape hypothesis. McKenna posited that psilocybin caused the primate's primitive brain information processing capabilities to rapidly reorganize, which in turn kick-started the rapid evolution of cognition that led to the early art, language, and technology written in Homo sapiens' archaeological record. As early humans, he said, we ate our way to higher consciousness by consuming these mushrooms, which he hypothesized grew out of animal manure. And psilocybin, he said, brought us out of the animal mind and into the world of the articulated speech and imagination. As human cultural evolution led to the domestication of wild cattle, humans began to spend a lot more time around cattle dung. And because psilocybin mushrooms commonly grow in cow droppings, the human-mushroom interspecies codependency was enhanced and deepened. It was at this time that religious ritual, calendar making, and natural magic came into their own. So McKenna did die in 2000, and he passionately believed in this hypothesis, though many scientists and many people around dismissed it as excessively speculative, as those guys like to do, but it is just a hypothesis. However, a talk in April at Psychedelics Science 2017, which was a scientific conference on psychedelics. And they believed in the therapeutic potential of these drugs, kind of renewed the interest in that theory. And there, Paul Stamets, a noted psilocybin mycologist, advocated for the stoned ape hypothesis in his talk. Quote, "I present this to you because I want to bring back the concept of the stoned ape hypothesis. What is really important for you to understand is that there is a sudden doubling of the human brain 200,000 years ago. From an evolutionary point of view, that's an extraordinary expansion, and there is no explanation for this sudden increase in the human brain." The doubling he talked about refers to the sudden growth in the size of the human brain, and he's right. The details are still up for debate. Some anthropologists believe that the brain size of Homo erectus doubled between 2 million and 700,000 years ago, while it's estimated that the brain volume in Homo sapiens grew 3 times larger between 500,000 and 100,000 years ago. So, laying these tenets of the stoned ape hypothesis out, Stamets pointed out a portrait of primates descending from African canopies, traveling across the savannas, coming across the largest psilocybin mushroom in the world, growing bodaciously out of the dung of the animals. And he says, quote, "I suggest to you that Dennis and Terence were right on. I want you or anyone listening or seeing this to suspend your disbelief. I think this is a very, very plausible hypothesis for the sudden evolution of Homo sapiens from our primate relatives." And the crowd broke out into a wild applause. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's definitely possible.
Yeah, we're not going to go into the science of that stoned ape
Look it up
hypothesis,
if you're interested.
But there's a lot of stuff around it, and yeah, so that kind of brings us to the end.
Yeah, it was a really fun topic to talk about, so much to cover, and obviously tons more we could have gone into, but I do think it's nice that we got, a little taster of all like the different plant medicines that they've been using throughout ancient history all over the world. So.
Yeah. And I think the main takeaway to come from this is that it is so deeply rooted in our past. It is an ancient history all over the world, in every culture. That is undeniable. And it was used for thousands of years by, shamans, by normal people, by in ceremonies and religion for their own personal mystical experience to experience death and what comes with the afterlife and all that. And it was used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And it's only recently that we've been cut off from that. And I think it is such an important aspect of humanity and our consciousness and our ability to connect with the cosmos and with the greater and deeper sense of reality. And we've been cut off from it. And I think it's starting to come back into, especially in the 60s, it started to come back into the West pretty big time. And then, it got made illegal and then everything like that. And now there's certain states and countries and places that are re-institutionalizing it through institution and through lots of legislation and therapeutic benefits. But I just think, it's a very incredible that we're suddenly cut off from this. And I don't think it's unintentional. I think they've purposefully cut us off from the flesh of the gods. This is what is constantly referred to, the nectar of the gods, the divine amrita, it's the inspiration, it's the thing that connects us to the spirit world and within ourselves, and they've cut us off from it. And I think, I feel very strongly that it can really help a lot of people, though if trying it for the first time, people should maybe do it in supervised settings.
And there are therapeutic institutions that are providing this, a safe place to heal with psychedelics and hallucinogenics. But I do think in the future, because it's such a great interest of ours, and I'm particularly so interested in the current benefits of psilocybin in magic mushrooms and the effects that this is having on so many conditions like severe PTSD, anxiety, depression, and the studies that have been going on in our modern age. So do subscribe, and if you're interested in that, let us know in the comments below, because we are really considering soon doing an episode on this, like the modern studies and what we know about the benefits for mental health, which is the biggest issue we have in our modern day, and you know, opening up these doors where these hallucinogenics can actually really help, you know, not just the symptoms, but like the illness in general. You know,
it can it not only will help and, you know, help those symptoms, but take you beyond that to places you never thought even possible. You know, when you're in a state of depression, anxiety, or PTSD, it's very hard to see anything outside of that. I myself has been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and this beautiful medicine and this gift and this flesh of the gods and this fruit of nature helped to bring myself out where no psychiatrist, modern pills and medicine could.
Yeah.
And it's not the path for everyone, but it was the path for me.
Yeah, and it is for many people, though. Yeah. And we are getting to a space now where we're going beyond anecdotal evidence. So, like, we know now that we've actually got scientists on the case, and, like, you know yourself from personal experience. So it would be really fun to share our own experience on an episode and really dive into that, but also explore the science that is now finally like sort of being explored all over the world, and we're getting all this data now just to prove what a lot of us already know, and also that it's not about the big trips. So we could also touch on the microdosing and the amazing effects that this is having. So definitely look forward to talking about that in the future. But it was so fun today just to dive into the past and the history, and I love like the spiritual connection that our ancient cultures have with these little mushrooms from our culture, but cacti and
all sorts of things.
Lotus flowers. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, really beautiful. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time for another episode on It's a Sign, where we dive in and try to open our minds and explore the not so talked about, the not so heard of, the unseen, and the extraordinary. Cool. So bye guys.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps us a lot.
Yeah, baby.
Okay, bye.
Bye.